Man, you guys can't hear it, but Jonathan's intros are just getting more and more exciting. Welcome to SJU. Welcome to Friday. You know that show Avatar: The Last Airbender? It's been finding a big new audience on Netflix this year. And guess what? The sequel series is hitting today. Legend of Korra is on Netflix. We're going to review it. It might have debuted 8 years ago, but that's okay. I'm Eric Goldman. Joining me is Danielle Radford. Danielle, how's it going?
Doing very well. Hello. Nice to hang out with you on a Friday.
Nice to hang out with you as well. Talk some bending. I think the way we'll do this, because again, I know I was joking that we're reviewing a show that's 8 years old, but I do think that you've seen Avatar got like a big new audience this year. Yes, some people rediscovered it, but I also think there's that Netflix effect. You know, people are checking out a show they've never seen before. So I think a lot of people are going to check out Korra for the first time. So I think what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit in sort of vaguer terms. We won't go into spoilers at first, but we think about Korra on the spoiler front, but then we will go into that as well, because I know you people who have watched it all want to talk about some of the big things. Danielle, I'm curious, what is your background with like Avatar and Korra? You've watched both shows, I know that.
Yes.
But did you watch them both when they aired? Did you watch one when they aired? When did you see it?
Eric, so look, guys, don't get a wig, because the wig hair will just get caught in your glasses, and it's a bad idea. Eric, I'm a woman of a certain age that I won't name. So I wasn't watching a lot of the Nickelodeon, for a while, but then people started telling me like how good Avatar was. And so, as everyone knows, I'm a big fan of genre specifically. Anime is not I like it a lot, but it's not one of my like nerdy cornerstones. That being said, and it doesn't really count as anime. I know it's more anime inspired.
Yeah.
I did really enjoy Avatar a lot. And it was one of my gateways to being able to enjoy more anime, because anytime you get some teens and they gotta save the world, give me a group of teens that gotta save the world. And so then when Korra came out, and it was like, it's based in the Avatar universe. It is slightly aged up. It only takes place about 70 years after Avatar, but there are all of these different changes. I was really, really excited for it. And that was one that I went looking for specifically. And, it gives me... when we did the Honest trailer, we compared the original Avatar to Star Wars, and it continues to be very Star Warsy. Weirdly, there are some Star Warsy things that happen in Korra that don't happen until later, right. In the new trilogy, which is very interesting, because people just think the same. I was really into it, female Avatar, who also gets to be flawed and figure things out. I'm real big on that. I'm real big on, obviously, as everyone knows, I'm a big fan of Buffy. I'm a big fan of Veronica Mars. Like, give me your lady leaders who are just trying to figure it out. Because I feel like that is such a... And yeah, I like the thing where leaders are just leaders and they just know what to do. But that's why I think the benefit of putting something, aging it for kids or for teens, because kids are trying to figure out everything. So imagine doing that and also trying to be like, oh, I'm also savior of the world. Sorry about it. That was how I kind of came across it, was other people telling me, because I don't watch Nick. And also, I haven't had cable in forever, and it's not because I'm one of those people who's like, I don't watch TV. I'm one of those people who's like, I don't have money. So that's why I don't own cable.
Understandable. Yeah, for me, it was interesting because I was a man of a certain age. I was working at IGN when Korra debuted. I had not seen Airbender, but clearly our audience was so excited that there was this new series in the same universe, and I wanted to be up on it all. So I binged Airbender on DVD, and I loved it. I thought it was great. And it was funny, I had like a big sort of anime aversion. I've never been into anime. There's something stylistically about it. A lot of the more cutesy stuff it just doesn't appeal to me. And again, knowing Airbender is not true anime, I still was like, but it's close. But then I watched it, and it actually, like you said, helped me appreciate other anime as well. It's a great show. But Korra is the one that I'm sort of more connected to. And I know that part of that is just, it's the one I watched as it aired, It's the one that I was like, totally there from the beginning, watching week to week. I'm a big proponent. I am very old-fashioned in thinking that when you release things weekly, you help people get even more connected to it. which I think speaks to the kids who grew up with Airbender.
I'm a graphic novel girl now, man. It happened, but once graphic novels happened, I was like, I need everything when I need it.
And I totally get that too. But yeah, Korra, I do think, Airbender is the better show in some ways, and we'll talk more about sort of specifics on that. But I think Korra has a lot of things about it that are really impressive, and it's the one that, for me, it's my favorite of the two. And some of that I think is literally just the way I watched it, but I also think, I really like how they had sort of advanced the story. The characters are a little older. Obviously, the animation, a lot of things have just gotten better. And I think there's some maturity to it that is really interesting. And I think really cool. I also really love aesthetically some of the things they did. I thought it was such a great idea that the show is set, 70 years after Airbender?
Yeah.
And so they basically decided, okay, well, if Airbender is the equivalent to the mid 1800s, what if this is the 1920s or 30s? And so they've got technology. Perfect. It looks like the 20s or 30s. There's radios and there's early movies. And I thought that was so cool to put into this universe without making it seem modern all of a sudden.
No, and they get to dip into that thing. And I was so happy they didn't do this because I was like, here comes the steampunk. And they didn't go full goggles. And I was ready for goggles. And no one
There's a
full
touch
goggles.
of it. Asami's got some cool goggles, but it's not
we don't
full.
Asami, we don't talk crap about Asami. In
No.
But also, it's, to your point, I think that it behooves people, when they look at Korra, because I do think that is one of the things when we talk about the two series, is that people tend to view Korra as being this direct sequel because it does have a lot of the same characters. It is about a new avatar. I think if you go into it thinking this is not a direct sequel, this is not the direct legacy of Aang, of that avatar story, this is another avatar story in the same universe. Yeah. I think looking at it more like that and less as a sequel series, it's very important to view it as its own thing. It's the same thing. This is going to be something that comes up for me a lot in this What? A lot in this review. It's the difference between Buffy and Angel.
Right.
Loved Buffy. Big Buff fan. Huge Buff fan. Angel, first couple series, not for this girl. Didn't work. And that was fine. It wasn't necessarily I wasn't angry that I didn't dig it, but I didn't like the way that it worked. And now that I've gone back, because then season 5 came and I was like, oh, this is for me. And I love season 5 of Angel more than anything in the world. And then I went back and looked at it and I was like, I was looking at it as a sequel or continuation of this Buffy storyline. I should have been looking at it as this is another way to tell a story in this universe using a character you already know as an entry. And so for Korra, this is another way to tell a story in this universe and expand the universe while using a character who has something you're familiar with, which is being the Avatar.
Right. Yeah, I think that's totally true. I think, by the way, I use the term, I think, at the top, sequel series, but I think you're right. It really isn't a sequel series. And I think a huge difference between this, say, and the Star Wars sequel trilogy is the amount of time, because there will always be people say, forget everything else you think about the Star Wars sequels, that just wanted it to be the further adventures of the characters from that original trilogy. And because it's 30 years later, they would have been older, but it's fine. This is 70 years later. And so, yes, a couple of the characters are still alive, but they're very elderly.
Still wearing the same hairstyle, by the way.
Still wearing the same hairstyle. Maybe they have different
wigs every week.
Yes.
What do I know?
But yeah, I felt like that time difference alone tells you, this is doing something different. We are going to touch upon it. There will be obviously some specific connections besides the fact that it's about the next Avatar. Some of these characters are the children of characters we knew, etc., etc. But it is not a sequel per se. It is not Aang's next adventure in any way, and it's not trying to be. And I do think, of course, I know online, like everything, people will get the huge rift and, oh no, Airbender's so much better than Korra. No, I like Korra's better. To me, it's there's no reason to fight about it because I'm just it's more of the world you love, and it might not be for you as much, but you might have your preference. But I think, first of all, there's nothing glaringly terrible about either. They're both great shows that have their ups and downs. But yeah, it's just exploring more of this world I love. And I really thought that, making it 70 years later was a really smart choice because it allowed them to have their own vibe in a different way.
And I love that kind of, and that was a perfect way to put it when you said, I love that it's that kind of, in between, even some of the fashion and the things that people wear are some of them are that like 20s 30s vibe.
Yeah.
The newsreel for the excuse me, this is one of those series where like you actually want to watch this is what happened last week. You want to watch it because it's actually really interesting, like the way that they do it with the newsreel style.
Yep.
Like that's really fun and an interesting way to do it, and it's stylized. It isn't just this is what happened, boom, boom, boom. They did make some very interesting, cool, stylistic choices. And, also, and I will say this is also part of my bias. I am a sucker for an urban fantasy. Man, you give me, you give some people who can, figure out how to use magic while also an elevator, and I am in. Give me both of those things. I love it.
So let's make the shift here, because I think we both clearly recommend this show if you haven't seen it. So now we'll do the spoiler warning. If you have not seen it, I think we will now dive into some of the things, some big things, because there's some stuff we have to talk about the end of this show, I think. So official spoiler warning for The Legend of Korra. If you're still with us, you either don't care about spoilers or you've already seen the series. So this show was 4 seasons, but I think it's really worth noting, by the way, even though it's one more season than Airbender, it was less episodes, right?
Yes.
And I think that's important because I do think if you were to name a flaw of this show is that, yes, especially early on, some of the characterization was not as strong as Airbender. It took longer to get into the inner lives or something. Like Mako in season 1, I thought was very one note. Later on, they developed him more. But I actually think it's very notable that Avatar was telling one giant arc over its entire series. It was all Aang's quest to get to the Fire Nation and stop this one main villain, versus this show, which told season-long arcs. And so the other thing about Airbender is it did a lot more standalone episodes, which helped you get to know the characters more, because it was just like, here's an adventure and it can be Katara-focused, and we'll get to know more about her this week. And so I do think it takes longer maybe to connect to some of the characters in Korra. What did you think about that?
Well, so, I hate to do this because I'm such a genre freak. Mm-hmm. I love when they do the kind of show where you both have monster or whatever of the week, and then you have the big bad of the season. That's my stuff. That is where I live. That is
the X-Files paradigm.
Buffy. That is X-Files. That is Supernatural. Like that is where I live. Like give me that. And then obviously like you have you have themes that go over the entire series. With Korra, again, it's very much like her coming into her power, her being able to connect to the spirit world, her being able to deal with some of the stuff that has happened with her. Those are huge themes, but that is also, for Avatar, it was very important. The Fire Nation, that's like 100-year war, dude. You kind of have to it makes sense that you take time to really get into that, and then you learn the characters and you get to know more about them, in the way that they did. That makes sense.
Right.
For Korra, I do feel like first off, there are no, and I love the episodes that can be very character focused. And there are some, because one of my favorite episodes, is very much a smaller character focused episode. But with Korra, I think one of the benefits of doing the big bad of the season is that it reveals things about your characters and who they are and about the world and what it is. And so and to its credit, I think that's great. Again, Legend of Korra is really about showing you the world as it is now. Every big bad of every season is very much about the world. It's not about how is this one character going to ultimately save the world. It is the world is going through changes, and these are the different ones. Which is you have the people in the first one, the Equalists, who are essentially and if you haven't seen the series so far, this is the spoiler part.
Yes.
But they are very much the if you ever got into X-Men, they are the people who are like, mutants are bad mutants. And which winds up obviously not being the case. But in every one, you see the way that this world has shifted and changed, and then the way that change reflects in the characters. It is very much, I feel more universe, like world building in that way, with the way that it deals with the different big bads of the season.
Yeah, I agree. I actually, so Ryan's been throwing in some questions and comments from the chat here. And Adam Holbert asked, he wanted to ask Danielle and Eric who is their favorite villains. And he kind of says similar, the villain of each season really elevate the show's themes. He says his favorites are Zahir and Kuvira. I'd say for me, it is Zahir. I think that this show did a really good job of making nuanced villains who, even if it was one of those things where you could at least see where they started, even if they ended up going down the wrong path.
Yep. Most
of the time, they started with, a good viewpoint or wanting to make the world a better place. Yep. And this is in counterpart to Airbender. This is where I think the show is a little more complex on some levels. Now, again, Zuko, of course, is an amazing character. We've talked about that a lot. On Airbender has a villain who has this incredible redemption arc. But
that's
the ultimate main villain of the show then, of course, is his dad, who's pretty one note. He's a great big bad, but it's not like there's a lot of like inner light, it's just he's an evil guy. This show, every season, I thought, we could talk a little bit more about good and bad stuff, and I think season 2 is the most flawed season with the most uninteresting villain. But most of the time, like a character like Zahir, it's like you really get where he's coming from, what he's trying to accomplish, and the fact that he's not like, I'm evil and I want to do evil things. He actually wants to help this world, but his approach isn't so great. What about you? Who's a favorite villain for you?
See, so a lot of seasons, and I do agree, a lot of seasons in TV, season 2 ends up being kind of, there can be a quality dip, at least as far as storytelling. I really liked the climax and the villain of that. If for no other reason than for me, I feel like so much of Korra's arc at that point had really been, and it continues to be, the fact that she was unable to connect to the spirit world, like and that's such a huge part of being the Avatar. Gosh darn it, here comes another Buffy comparison. I can't help it. I simply can't help it. Oh no, and now it's gonna get even nerdier and worse. So Buffy, gosh darn it. In season 8, there was a graphic novel, or there was a comic that was released around the same time as season 7, that was called Frey. I believe it was called Frey. Yep. And Frey, this is all top of my head, I should have written this down.
Got the red axe.
With the red axe. And so Frey was about a future where demons and everything was more it was mainstream. People knew about them. It was acknowledged. They didn't really like them. It was still like, ew, gross, lurks and gross things. But it was about the idea that what happened if you had a slayer who had all of the skill but didn't have like the leadership stuff that is supposed to be
watcher,
didn't have the watcher, didn't have the sight and all of those things. And that was one of the things I found really interesting about Korra, is that Korra had all of these innate physical abilities and had this ability to really connect with the elements, but did not have that central thing of being able to connect with spirits. And so for me, season 2 was really important as far as her character arc went, because it was so much of her, and she already had that, again, Ray moment where at the end of season 1, all of the spirits come back. Aang's like, hey, it's me. I'm Aang. I'm hot now. I have a chin beard. Deal with it. And they all come back and they hang out and they make her strong and stuff. But then watching that connection build and then get weak, and then the way that, and then grow strong again, and then the way that changed the entire world and the way that affected the whole world was really huge to me. So I did, because of that, I really liked the Dark Spirits.
No, yeah, I see that too. And it's funny, by the way. So for me, season 2 is my least favorite, and there's some stuff a lot of people call out, like season 2 infamously had 2 different animation companies work on it, and you can see that stylistic change, and one is better than the other. And I'm not as much into the villain, but then I also looked back on season 2. I'm like, wait a second. Season 2 introduced Varric. I want to talk more about Varric. it had Juan. It had that whole cool thing with the first Airbender. It had Bolin becoming a movie star. There was a lot of cool stuff in season 2, even though I do think it's the weakest for me, like story overall. But even there, when I think it's like, oh, this is an off season for the show, I think still there's a lot of strong elements. And yeah, I think, you mentioned like in season 1, it's cool because even like Amon and the Equalists, I believe is season 1. It's like, even that group, yeah, there's some parallels to kind of the X-Men thing, but it's a little different, I think, in a cool way, because instead of being like, you got these powers and I fear you and hate you, it's more like, you got these powers and you think you're better than us, and and we feel downtrodden because of it. And where that comes from. Now, of course, then it goes into the villain place of, we're going to take your powers, going to get rid of you all. But I just still think, it's a pretty cool show as far as, all the villains coming from this very interesting, like, okay, you can see how this can relate to our real world and to different issues that I thought was done really well.
And season 2 is more, and I will say this, as far as plot and character stuff, it's good. It is very much more world building and setting up like the things that are going to happen in the rest of the season.
And I believe production-wise, might get this wrong, I'm sorry, Korra fans, I think what happened was they made season 1 in a vacuum, which is to say they didn't know there'd be more than one season when they made season 1. Yep. But then, so that's why there is a little disjointed feel of like, oh, we did the one season, which can feel like a complete-ish story. Oh, we're doing more, and then season 2 feels kind of awkward because now they're like, oh, we're doing more, let's try to like throw in all this stuff, you know?
I believe it was supposed to be a movie or a series of kind of shorts, and then it was like, no, it's going to be like a full-ass animated TV show now, and it's like, cool.
Right.
Now we'll do that thing. And again, that is a lot of TV shows where they have a very strong season 1 because either the premise is so like crazy for TV, they don't know that they're going to make it to a season 2 or other things.
And they use all their best ideas in season 1.
Throw everything at season 1 because we don't know if we're getting a season 2, and make it so it can be a complete arc. And if this is the last thing we did, it is a beautiful, 12-hour, 13-hour, 14-hour, however long piece of art. And then they get a season 2 and they're like, I guess a bus crashes? I don't know. That's more Veronica Mars.
Yes, it is. So Shalise T, I hope you're pronouncing your name right, Shalise, asks, I like the show, but I felt like Korra, I think she means Korra the character specifically, felt like Korra didn't really have that much character development throughout the series until maybe a little bit in the very last season.
Right.
Thoughts? What do you think, Danielle, on Korra and her specific development as a character?
I thought that she did. Again, I thought that a lot of it, like the connecting with the spirit world and all of that things. But in terms of if we're talking about more of like her personal journey and those things, Korra alone is probably my favorite episode. It is the episode, it's season 4, episode 2 or 3, one of those.
Yeah.
It's my favorite episode of the series. It is very much Korra dealing with her past trauma and the things that she has been with, and the fact that she has been separated from her buds for a few years. I do think that when you start to really get into the character of Korra, that is where it starts to hit the strongest. I always felt that it was a pretty strong character and that I related with her, but so much of the series is about like, this is my job, I am bound. This is my job, I am like, I have to do these things. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I felt like the fact that like that was the rock that she kept hitting upon and then finally just like broke, that to me felt like a very satisfying character arc because it felt like that was kind of where it was always going.
Yeah, I don't feel like Korra didn't have any character development till the last season because I do feel like I always liked her. I think, she had her flaws. She was definitely sort of that, that sometimes arrogant hero who could be her own worst enemy, etc. But I thought that along the way, we definitely were seeing her grow and make big decisions and wanting to sort of change things from the past and like one closing off the spirit world and being like, no, that was the wrong decision.
Right.
But then I think season 4 just does such a great job of doing a lot more depth. Not that I didn't think she had depth before, but I just think season 4, again, I think it does some brave things, especially for a quote unquote kid show. It's so much about like PTSD and her like really having to sort of deal with this sort of stuff and going through some depression and battling through it. And the counterpoint I love of her first battle with Kavira, where she's not ready to fight her, not because Kavira's more powerful from her, but because her head's not in the game. I thought they did it really well. So while I think season 4 did an even better job and has the best development for Korra, I don't think it wasn't there, Right.
To me, it kind of reminds me of Hunger Games. The movies kind of, but especially the books, wherein the first few are just like, yo, I get it. Like, I am this person. I mean, and obviously Katniss and Korra are completely different characters. Katniss is unlikable on purpose. She do not like people. That is her deal. That is her vibe. She hates you all. She is doing this to save her family. Yeah, she hates you all. She hates the cat. She's doing this to save her family. And I guess you guys get to come along too. That's Katniss's vibe. But it is very much that thing of like people who feel like they have to be like this steely, like wear a coat of almost emotional armor and other armor. And you get to be goofy and you get to have fun. And then something major happens and it's just like, oh, I have to like deal with that and how that makes me feel, which means I have to deal with feelings. Because obviously like the last, book of the Hunger Games is all about PTSD. And it's all about Katniss's journey with that. And again, they get into a little bit in the movie. The book really gets into it. And so I think that's a lot of why I liked book 4 was because it was Korra like really dealing with herself after these big major things have happened. And the fact that she's literally fighting herself. And you know, it feels on the nose, but it's a kid's show. If I reviewed a show that is all ages, but is obviously focused for kids because it is on a kids network. If I reviewed that the same way as I reviewed Kubrick, I would be stupid and wrong.
Right. and yes, as you said, there's also some Star Wars parallels there, which again, Star Wars being a classic hero's journey anyway. So yeah, she fights herself. And also that's, you know, where they bring in Toph in a very sort of Yoda and eventually Luke. Like you said, it precedes the sequel trilogy, but has some parallels to it way. I thought that was really cool. We have from Jos Battenberg says, Julie and Varric, cutest couple ever somehow. Well, I am very pro Varric and Julie and do the thing, Julie. I don't know if the cutest couple ever, but I certainly love those characters, and I especially was impressed because Julie, it could come off pretty terrible that if they end up a couple, if it just seems like he's kind of abusive and terrible to her, but then they kind of do this whole like inner life for Julie thing that sort of sprouts up that I thought was really well done. And
especially like they put a button on it, which again, in a lot of cases I would be like, you don't have to do this, but I'm like, this is for children. You do have to do this. At the wedding, they're like, okay, but she's your equal, right? Like you are promising to love her as an equal. And he's like, more than anything. I cried at the wedding. It's fine. I cried at everything. I love them and I love him and her together. And again, the fact that the characters themselves were like, hey, like she's your equal now. Like you're going to make sure that you love her as an equal. Cutest couple ever. Cutest couple on the show. There's only one that I like above them. Y'all know who McQueer ass. I
think we're gonna share that one. Prince Poo asks, "Who is best boy and why is it Who is best boy and why is it Bolin?" I love these. I love the fan questions.
Wait,
guys.
Is Bolin? Does he handle the lighting? Sorry, that's me being a nerd.
I think Bolin's great. Bolin is, obviously a comic relief character, but he's a really fun comic relief character. And I really did enjoy all that stuff with him becoming the movie star and where they went with that. I feel like, I think the first season, it's a good season. And I like it more than 2 as far as its storytelling. But it feels like they were so contained in that season. Season 2 starts to really develop these characters because like pro bending, for instance, it was cool to an extent. It felt a little too Quidditchy, like as far as like, let's add this sports element. But I really liked when Bolin kind of got to do his own thing a little more as we were going.
But look, it does make sense. All male gymnastic people in high school eventually become wrestlers who do nothing but do flippy doos. So it does make sense. I love Bolin. Just a big sweetheart. I don't know about best boy, but one of the best boys. Not ever on the show. Yeah, probably best boy.
So let's do a little bit, sort of like favorites here. We talked about favorite villains, but is there? Do you have like a favorite season? Like, what is your favorite season of the show?
It's season 4. I as much as I do love the world building that the show does, and I do think that is a lot of one of the benefits of the show that I think is overlooked. And in fact, I think it is like the major part of the show that I think gets overlooked because people are looking for other things. season 4 does have a lot of the most of the character building. Obviously, there's a lot of sads. And then it ends with big gay hand holding. And who doesn't love big gay hand holding? No one. Lots of people. But not me. Give me my gay hands.
Understandable. I endorse as well. I go back and forth a little bit between favorite season. It's 3 or 4. I think they're great. I think they go hand in hand. Speaking of characters going hand in hand, I think 3 and 4 are very in relationship to each other, just as far as like, because we saw, because as we said, season 4 deals so much with the aftermath of 3, although it takes a 3-year time jump, which is another kind of brave thing I think to do. For like again, kids show where sometimes they don't like to really progress you.
Right.
But, and that's the other thing is like these characters started out older than Airbender, but then they actually like, they got careers. Like they really like, they were doing
At the end
stuff.
of it, they all got jobs. That's when they all became Aurors.
Well, Mako was working for the police. So. Defund Mako.
Defund Mako. Look, I like Mako.
I came a lot around on Mako at first. I
came around. I don't look. You're allowed to be both a player and crush a lot. I get it. Right. But yeah, he was one that I did have to come around to. It's not as easy. Look, I like my Bolin. I like my thick boys. I don't know what to tell you.
But yeah, 3 and 4, I maybe 3 a little bit more just because I think Kavira is really cool, but I think Zahir is a little stronger as a villain. But then there are such highlights of season 4, like you mentioned. Korra alone is amazing, and the ending is amazing. So it's a coin flip for me between 3 and 4. I thought this series in general had amazing fight scenes. What about you? Is there any fights that really stick out to you?
So, and I will say this, and I think I've said this in other reviews. In fight scenes, if things get too, I like when they're very, very focused, and I like when they're and so when things get very, too much stuff happening at the screen at once, my brain just goes, no, thank you. I like, which is something that, both Avatar and, this show have been very good at avoiding, that thing where there's so much happening on the screen where it's like, I want to follow one person and I want to follow them while they do cool things. And you can have craziness happening in the background. I want, like that for me in an Endgame, when they're doing the football, pass the gauntlet, and then when they're doing the football pass the Peter, those moments are so big for me because it gives me a focal point and something to care about. I like fighting. I get why it's very important in shows, and I like that it's very cool. It has never been one of I could be very happy watching a genre show about a bunch of teens who learn how to do powers and never throw a punch. I'm a weirdo, which is crazy because I like wrestling. Maybe it's because I already get my fill of all of that stuff in the WWE. Then I'm like, but I just want to watch them learn how to bend, you guys. Give me angst.
It's fine. I get that too. I love that too. And in fact, we only have a few minutes left and we have got to talk about the Korra Asami of it all. But so I'll just mention quickly that the final fights of 3 and 4, again, those 2 seasons, 3 because it was very just like, oh my gosh, this is like superheroes come to life, was Zahir and her flying around. It's also where Korra like breathes fire. That's badass. And then, because 4 kind of has its
giant robot. Come on.
Giant robot and a kind of endgamey. We're all working together. It was cool.
And I pop very big for friendship. I pop very big for, we're all in this together. We all have to come together to defeat things. There were big deaths and it was really sad, but also giant freaking robot. That is kind of cool. I love giant mechs. Robot. I do like mechs.
But yeah, let's close out here by talking to the Korra Asami of it all. Obviously, when this show ended, it was a giant deal, and I think it still is, obviously. Me and Roth worked together at IGN at the time, and we did like a 15-minute video just talking about all that and the finale. I love it, and I still think, looking back on it, I know there were people that were like, this came out of nowhere. What are you talking? This was just thrown in at the end. I never felt that. I felt that season 3 and 4 definitely built up to it in a really good way, where I was very surprised that like, oh, they're going there. but I thought that it actually had been quite earned. What do you think about it all?
Some people have simply never been queer, because little eye glances and little things back and forth.
Korra blushing when she's told she's like, isn't Asami saying she likes her haircut? Yeah.
It is an entire thing, guys.
Yes.
Some of you have simply never read old Victorian letters of best friends that are girls writing each other and telling them how much they missed their presence.
Those Emily Dickinson letters, those are good stuff.
Look, but no, I definitely felt it was. I think here's the thing. It is interesting, and I think that when we talk about media, especially now, everything. When we talk about the 60s, we talk about upheaval, and we talk about like a lot of those things. We talk about the 70s. We talk about like kind of these big broad strokes. Right now, literally like right now, and not just right now, but like in the last 15 years, there have been so many very sudden changes from the way that when I was younger and watching media to what's happening now. It is crazy, because if you go back and you watch a movie from 2009 even, and you see the way that they treat queer folks, trans folks, even like Asian folks, it being so okay to treat Asian folks like the butt of the joke. And you go and you watch that now, it's like, ooh. So at the time, it may have seemed very out of place, if only because shows were just not doing that. Even like mainstream shows were not doing that. It would be a joke on like a How I Met Your Mother. It would be a joke that one of them wanted to make out with Robin. That was, you know what I mean? Like that's like a ha ha ha, JK, just kidding. But that is the beginning to me, because if you look at cartoons now, you might not get it until the last second of the last show of the last season, but they're gonna give it to you. They're gonna give you your gay eventually. Now, if you're Steven Universe, the gay is all over. It's just gay, lesbos, gay. But you know, in Adventure Time, when you get Bubbling and you get that kiss at the end that tells you like, no, you're not crazy, you're not being gaslit. The thing that you saw was what you saw. A lot of shows before, Rizzoli and Isles was a big one, where they recognized that the characters had this chemistry together, and that people were shipping them because as the queers, we are so bereft of representation that we will just make stuff up in our brains because we need it. It's like the Dean and Castiel stuff in Supernatural. That is not canon, but it's like, please, let me have this because I need it. And now shows are just straight up giving it to us instead of us having to pretend in our brains it was happening. And for me, that was one of the biggest instances of that happening in animation. And now again, you have, I'm not going to spoil it. These are other shows. But there are other shows where they end. Adventure Time, you guys have all seen it, but there are other shows I want you to see where they do end, where it is very much, you can see it the entire time during the show, and then those couples get together. And again, it's not until the very end. It isn't quite that thing where Law and Order did, where they got rid of that one DA's assistant, and she's like, "Is it because I'm gay?" I'm like, "Girl, you've been here for like 12 years." Right.
We never heard anything.
Never talked about you being gay.
Yeah.
So I think you also have to put that into the context of the time as well.
Absolutely. You know, the finale aired 6 years ago, which sounds like nothing, but it's so really much in pop culture. And yes, even when it aired, some people were like, but doesn't it suck they didn't actually show them kiss? And yes, it's too bad they couldn't, but it was groundbreaking, guys. Like the fact that a Nickelodeon show would have this happen at the end at all. And yes, you know, because there were still some doubters, well, maybe it's not what you think. I liked that right away the creators came out and said, no.
It's gay.
This is a romance. And yes, of course, things have now evolved. Like in those 6 years, like you're saying, Danielle, other shows have been like, yes, now we can show this. But Korra was a huge turning point for that. Yep. And yes, they had to be more subtle than they would have liked to be. But I think if you go back and watch it, it's not out of nowhere at all. It is definitely there. And the fans who were picking up on it, it was fun, but I think none of us thought they would actually go there. Nope. It's like, oh, it's like a fun little, I remember
because watching they never do.
Yeah. Watching that final scene and being like, wait, it's just the two of them alone in this scene? That's meaning, like the way you're ending this show means a lot. So if you're choosing to end it with these two characters, even before they like look at each other and everything, I'm like, this is important. I'm really glad they did it. And yes, of course, if they did it today, it would be, we talked to Janet Varney recently about, yes, of course, if they did it today, they'd be able to show more and be a little more overt about it. It would never be that overt. It's a kid's show. But for
It'd be
any
like a tiny kiss. It'd be like
they could have had a kiss, yeah.
Yeah, or like a kiss on the hand or something. It's like, let's go hang out with some spirits, my dude.
But it was great. I'm so glad they did it, and I put some of my Korra figures running. I couldn't lift over the heavy Asami and Korra little statue I have, but I'm all about it. I ship it. So Danielle, we're wrapping up here, but I guess your final word on Korra, I guess, is check it out if you haven't.
Yeah. Go watch it. Again, I think that it serves you to look at it as this is a cool way for a bunch of cool characters who are interesting to be a gateway into showing you the future of this universe and this world you already like, and then different parts of it that you haven't seen. Plus, there are some gobbles.
That's all true. And I never mentioned two characters I love, Tenzin or Lin. She's over my shoulder, so they're great. I just want to say that.
Tenzin's great. Get you a master like Tenzin.
That's right. So guys, thank you so much for being with us every day. Subscribe to our channel. You don't have to smash that like and subscribe, but you can tap it. Just hit it. We'll be very thankful. Thanks for being here.
Reimburse you.
Yes, but we have a reciprocal love here. So thanks guys for being here. If you love Avatar and Korra, guess what? Our next Fandom 5 trivia show is coming up in 15 minutes. It's all about Avatar: The Last Airbender. So you're going to want to watch that because it's going to be a lot of questions that I think you're going to have some fun with. And the link is in the description if you'd like to check that out. And you should, right?
Yeah, and you could win $650 if you win.
$650.
$650. That's not like that's a good amount of money. You get to hang out with Starr, which is like one of the best things in the whole world. You get to hang out with other Avatar fans. Go check it out. It's gonna be really.
And there's a YouTube link in the chat if you just want to watch and you don't feel like competing. You have to be in the US, but yeah, there is a YouTube link in the chat as well.
So if you're not in the U.S. or you are a voyeur, you can just check it out.
We're all voyeurs.
We're all voyeurs here. I'm going to be in both, just kind of hanging out. But I'll especially be in the chat in the YouTube, and I'll be in and out of stuff because I like the show. So I will be in there as well.
So yeah, join us for that, and then spend your weekend binging some Avatar, Korra, Netflix. Thanks for being here, guys. We'll see you next week. Have a good weekend.